What is up? Welcome back. 2024-2025 NBA season previews. My name is Matt Hanifan. I'm here with Jiarmani. Today we're going to be talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. But first, Jiarmani, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm Matt. I'm fantastic. Obviously we're gonna be talking about Cleveland. I like Cleveland. Don't get me wrong. I think what they have going on over there is pretty good. And I feel like this is a season they can be proud of. Obviously, there was stuff like over the course of the season, the offseason stuff, like all the stuff we're gonna talk about. But I'm doing great. I hope you're doing well. I'm ready to talk about Cavaliers.
I'm very excited for basketball season. This is my time of year.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was a pretty. You always know. I mean, it's not always the case, but like something bad is potentially brewing as soon as you get like the Shams Charania story the next day after you get eliminated from the playoffs about everything that happened, or everything that can happen. Like JB Biggerstaff may be fired. Darius Garland all of a sudden just doesn't want to play with Donovan Mitchell anymore. Like all of that kind of not mumbo jumbo. Mumbo jumbo is the wrong word to use, but like all of that kind of chaotic
Drama.
news drama. That's see, yeah, perfect word, drama.
Drama.
Like all of that surfacing just in one specific, like at that specific moment. Not a whole lot happened this offseason in that regard, but what did you think of them? They finished 48 and 34 last season. They beat Orlando in 7 games in the first round of the playoffs after I think they were down like double digit. I want to say it was like 14 points or something like that in game 7. They make this great comeback. They beat Orlando in 7, and then they lose to Boston. Your Boston Celtics. Again, we were mentioning Boston on this podcast. I feel like throwing up. But anyway, what do you think about what happened to them last season
I
and everything that transpired?
Yeah. So talking about like the Darius Garland thing, I know a lot of people might be very critical of Darius Garland being like with that whole thing of him not wanting to play with D Mitch and all that. Like Darius Garland is a good point guard. He's a very good point guard, in fact. And obviously, I from my understanding, he had to deal with some injuries over the course of the year. I think he had to deal with like some sort of facial like injury. I think with his nose or something last year. And
He gets hit in the
um,
face like every other game.
so the thing with him is that I think if he comes into the season healthy, I think he's gonna have like another season of averaging like 22 and 8. And honestly, something like that will propel Cleveland to being at least like another team to worry about in the Eastern Conference. Because like what you're gonna get with Donovan Mitchell, and like I'll get to him in a little bit, but Darius Garland, I feel for him, like just last season, I think it was I don't this wasn't the first year. No, this is maybe like what the second year he was playing with Donovan.
Yeah, it was second.
Yeah. Okay. So and you have to
Yeah.
look at how he was playing even the year before he got there, because the year Donovan got there, like he was averaging like I'm just rounding off numbers here, but like 22 and 8. The year before he was averaging 22 and 9. Like
Yeah.
that, like so I feel like playing with Donovan isn't the issue, because obviously I think he's more of like a pass first guy who can score. Like I think like he's the perfect kind of point guard they need out there in Cleveland. It was somebody, because even then they made it to the playoffs even without Mitchell, but obviously Mitchell's kind of the one that's kind of like really like kind of propping them up a little bit more, because they were a playing team like 2 years
Yeah.
ago. So but I think Darius Garland, if he has himself kind of like a healthy offseason and going into the season without any insinuating circumstances and getting popped in the face and he's out for a few games and it messes with his production. But yeah, I definitely see him having like a bounce back season, at least compared to his standards. So I do like what Cleveland did. Like Cleveland, I do feel like when it came to that series against Orlando was obviously a very young team. Like some of their better players are under like the age of 23, 24, and like they lost a few games because of that inexperience. Like when Wagner tried to throw a layup up, either a layup or a dunk on Mobley. I think it was Mobley. Mobley just packed him up right away. That cost him the game. So, like I feel like, at least on Orlando's case, just touching on them a little bit, they kind of I wouldn't say overachieved, but I would say like they really were a little bit more further along than maybe a lot of people may have kind of given them credit for, because they have a lot of good pieces over there. But with Cleveland, like seeing that series against Boston, and like even if they only won the one game, keep in mind it's against like now the defending champions, but the fact that like how like pretty much how ballistic Donovan Mitchell can be in the playoffs, it's like this team can be scary if they can kind of like put it all together. But yeah, I do like what Cleveland had going for them last season. It just seems like there's some things they're gonna have to address in like obviously like going into next season now. And I think those guys can actually be a pretty formidable group of guys. But obviously, like, I'm really curious to see like Darius Garland. But I know you probably have your opinions and thoughts about it, so I'm kind of curious to give you the floor now.
I think the biggest change with them that happened this offseason, one that some may think that they needed or some that they think they didn't need, was bringing Kenny Atkinson in instead of JB Bickerstaff. I think obviously again with the historians and with the reports that came out, JB Bickerstaff, I think his time in Cleveland was it was time. I think he's still a good coach. He's now in Detroit. I think he's going to do a solid job with that group. At least I hope he does better than Monty Williams, because they were a historically bad team, worst team in franchise history, and that to some extent, at least in recent memory, says something. That was an awful situation for everyone, and I think he'll do much better there with the pieces that they have. But
at least they got the Tigers now. All right.
Yeah, at least they got the Tigers and the Lions
Yeah. Okay.
But that was a really bad situation in Detroit, and now JB Bickerstaff's there. But I think with Kenny Atkinson, he was the former coach of the Brooklyn Nets. At one point, I don't want to say it was 2 seasons ago, he almost, I say almost, like he agreed to be the head coach of Charlotte until, I don't know, he probably took a look at the roster or whatnot. He's just like, never mind, I actually don't want to do this. And he backed out of the job, stayed an assistant in Golden State, where he was for, I think, for a couple years. He was in Golden State and he was in LA after he got fired from Brooklyn. And now he's back.
I think he won 2 championships as an assistant, because I think he was on that 2020 Lakers coaching staff, and then obviously he was on 2022 with Golden State.
And so then, like, he's now back. Like, he's a player development. I mean, like, that's what he was known for in Brooklyn. Like, obviously not the best teams, but like 2 guys that are on this team, on this Cavs team, were there with him in Brooklyn: Karis LeVert and Jared Allen. And he obviously had a good enough relationship with those guys, and obviously there's some connection there. And I think that was part of like one of the many re-signings they had this offseason. They re-signed a bunch of players. But one of the many re-signings they had this offseason was Jared Allen. There also was question about that, because there's question. It's kind of atypical in today's NBA where you have the double big lineup, and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley don't exactly complement each other in that way. Like, not, I mean, Evan Mobley, he's worked on improving his 3-point shot. It's still not really where you want it to be at yet for that to work fluidly. But that's something that they did. They re-signed Evan Mobley to, rookie max extension. They re-signed Donovan Mitchell after there were reports for, I don't know, 1 to 2 years, whether or not he actually wanted to be in Cleveland. And then obviously Garland's still there. But so they re-signed a lot of guys in addition to Isaac Okoro and whatnot. And that was their most recent re-signing. But they bring back mostly the same team. But I am interested to see what Kenny Atkinson can do from a player development standpoint when it comes to a guy like, Isaac Okoro, when it comes to a guy like Sam Merrill, who emerged onto the scene last year. Even guys under the radar, guys you're not really going to think of, like Craig Porter Jr., who was, I want to say he was an undrafted rookie last year. And some of the younger guys they have along that roster, like a Max Strus, even though Max isn't like super duper young or anything like that, but like a guy like him, like what does he do from a player development standpoint? And then from an offensive perspective, like I think there's going to be more motion and stuff kind of layered within that offense that Atkinson likes to run, especially since, he just came from a Steve Kerr where it's a motion laden offense. I don't know if he's going to take some things from that or whatnot, but I'm expecting a little bit more motion to create more favorable opportunities for Donovan Mitchell, for Darius Garland, for some of these other guys while they're playing in this double big context. So I like the move that they made to get Kenny Atkinson. I do think he's going to do a solid job with this group.
It was funny because that was probably another point that I forgot to mention. I do like the signing of Kenny Atkinson too, to bring him in. And I didn't even make that connection with like some of the old Brooklyn guys, but you looked at what Brooklyn, or like what he was able to do at Brooklyn. Like you said, they weren't the best teams, but they were fun. And even then, like, it seemed like those guys had fun playing for him. So, so I feel like he's going to get a lot out of these younger guys, or at least at the very least, it builds a culture, or at least a new culture in Cleveland. And I feel like some of these things where they came out, like Garland's unhappy, Mobley's unhappy, stuff like that. It's like certain things you may not be able to control, like what a player feels about any given situation. Like maybe not, like of course not everybody probably likes playing in Cleveland, but I mean, like either way, it's like not even a dig. It's like compared to like other teams, and like if you're a free agent, like you're not gonna want to play in Cleveland compared to like if the Lakers or like the New York Knicks are calling you or something like that. It's just a
Cavs
matter of
fans are
market.
coming for you in the comments, by the way.
Yeah, they'll be all right. You guys, LeBron helped you guys get your championship. Okay, you guys will be okay. Um, but even then, this team, like, the fact that if they can just even be like, if they can build a culture, and if that's what Kenny Atkinson's able to do, and be able to get the most out of these young guys because they're gonna like playing for him, that can go so far when it comes to like just building long-term chemistry with a lot of these guys. Because obviously, like the guys we're talking about, Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, all those guys are under like. I think Mitchell's probably like the oldest one out of all of them, and like even then, I think Mitchell's like maybe only 27 at the most, 28, I think. But, um, but again, at the same time, it's like I think getting JB Bickerstaff out of there and just bringing a new voice into that locker room will probably help out a ton. Because you say JB Bickerstaff's a good coach. I'm not
I
gonna
think
say
he's
he's a bad
fine.
coach. I think he's
Fine.
very serviceable. Like I remember, like he's managed to keep a job in the NBA for years. I remember he was coaching the Rockets like back when James Harden was there all those years ago. Like I remember stuff like that. That's crazy. But for him, I think like him finding it like just a change of scenery and kind of like flipping like some of the personnel probably will help this team in the long run a lot more. And I'm kind of glad to see Kenny Atkinson get like another crack at being a head coach in the NBA.
Yeah, me too. One guy that I want to talk about was a guy that I liked pre-draft, who they drafted number 20th overall. Was their actually one of two picks that they had, Jalen Tyson. And Cleveland was a team to where like I thought they needed to go big in the draft just because of like what they don't really have much behind Mobley and Allen in that respect. Like Tristan Thompson at this stage of his life can only do so much. But Jalen Tyson's definitely a guy that I think can add a little bit of juice to their bench group. He was, I think it was 4 different colleges in 4 years, something like that. Very good shot creator. I want to say, well, not as good of a defender as I would like for him to be in college, but I think a lot of that was just because of what he was tasked to do on the ball. I do think he was a guy who had a really good summer league. If you go back and watch some of the summer league games or some league clips, like he was doing a really good job and he was running the show there. And so he's definitely a guy that I like. Again, I don't know. It's just you're bringing back a lot of the same pieces and you're hoping for internal improvement under Kenny Atkinson. But I guess where do you think this team is? Like, how do you think this team plays this upcoming season? Again, they went 48-34 last year. They were the number 4 seed in the East. Do you think they improve upon that? Do you think they don't? Like, where do you kind of see them at?
I think it's kind of hard because I know it's kind of might be the same way than how we were talking about Dallas. I feel like they'll get better, but their record may not reflect it. I feel I like the thing is with the East is like you kind of have to like respect how some of the other teams have managed to like obviously the Boston's not going anywhere. You have Philadelphia that got better. Like I mean I guess like I mean you got New York with the Villanova Knicks now. So I mean I could see them being another like team in the middle of that Eastern Conference again. And I feel like it's just like you're banking on like these guys to really kind of like put it together when it comes to like how are Mitchell and Garland going to be able to like are they going to be able to have like become that dynamic backcourt where both those guys look like legit like Donovan Mitchell's there, but is Darius Garland going to like answer that call? And even going back to talking about Mobley, it's like him like that dynamic with him and Jared Allen, like both those guys. I'm not going to say like Mobley's just straight up a non-shooter, but I think like he likes to play within like the 3-point line. So like having those guys, like a team like that, a double big lineup like that probably would be a first seed in the NBA, like maybe 15, 20 years ago at this point, but like even bringing up the Magic again, like they tried to get Shaq and Dwight Howard to play together, not comparing like the forward with each other, but I think if you can get a little bit more of an offensive game out of Evan Mobley instead of just being like that guy who's going to be a good screen setter and a guy who can probably take the occasional mid-range jumper, even having him like fade out to like the corner and be able to knock down like even like a long distance jumper. Like that would be an improvement, not just being a non-shooter.
Yeah.
Like even then, like obviously like he has like obviously I don't look at Evan Mobley and like see what other people saw in him in the draft being like, oh, this guy could be like the next Tim Duncan, the next Kevin Garnett. No. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be very formidable in that front court for Cleveland. But I would say like if we want to see true improvement out of those guys, you have to see what Darius Garland's going to give you when a full I feel a fully healthy season with him and Mitchell as a backcourt, and how is Evan Mobley going to take another step forward, being that big lottery pick that you guys got and that big man that pretty much they were saying the big man of the future for him, because they were saying like, oh, if you move Jared Allen, then you can slide Mobley to the center and maybe he enjoys playing the center at least a little bit more or something like that. But I think I'm looking at Garland and Mobley as like the two biggest, like if those guys can rise, that's where you can see Cleveland kind of be maybe a top 3 team in the East, because like even how they were last year, those guys, like you said, were a 4 seed and they won 48 games. So it's like that team's good. Like barring anything else, that team's it's a good team.
And just looking at it, like both Garland and Mitchell, or not Garland and Mobley missed time middle of the season, and then all of a sudden they just vaulted into one of the league's best defenses, even though they're missing one of their best, probably their best defender, and Evan Mobley. And I just think that's a lot of that. That's a testament to obviously the team gelling and coming together, and the next man up mentality, but also I think Bickerstaff deserves like some credit too. And they were one of the best defensive teams in the league last year while being like a middle tier offense. I am with you. Like if you can get a healthy Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, or at least a fully healthy version of those 3 next season, because Mitchell played 55 games last year. That's not a crazy amount. Garland played 57. Mobley only played 50. Strus played 70. Jared Allen played 77. Karis LeVert played 68, a quarter 69, so on and so forth. George Niang actually played 82 games. I didn't know that. Anyway, but I do think if you can get like those guys playing, or those guys healthy and playing on the court at the same time, like I really do think this team, there's a potential. I mean, again, it just depends on how the rest of the East shakes out, but there is a world where they can get to 50 wins. I'm not banking on it, but this can be a 50-win team right now. If we're talking in terms of standings, I have them 5th. I again, this was another one where I struggled outside of. We did the Dallas one earlier. This is one where I struggled outside of the top 2. I have the Brooklyn Nets 1. No, I'm just kidding. I have the Boston Celtics 1 and the New York Knicks 2. And then after that, to me it was a little shaky, but I did ultimately have Cleveland 5. I think they can supersede that, but if you told me they were the 5th or 6th seed, I wouldn't also be surprised there either.
Okay. I would say kind of like a way to kind of like tie this team together, or like kind of tie a bow on talking about Cleveland, is the fact that if we can get, even if they get those guys playing, like even like all of them play like 60 plus games, 65 plus, I think that like those guys can get on a streak. Like those guys, I think that team itself could be a top 3 team in the East at the very best, or yeah, they can be middle to bottom tier fighting for a play-in spot. But I would say in any case, because the problem with Mitchell is like obviously he wasn't as healthy as he can be, but obviously like in the postseason, like he is a proven postseason performer. So like that, like I feel like those guys are going to be a very intriguing matchup no matter where they fall. It's a matter of seeing how these guys go about getting to the postseason this upcoming year.
Yeah, and they also need Garland to be better in the postseason than he was last year, because Garland was
non-factor.
It was not good. Again, not saying he's a bad postseason player, but I just think if you want them to go to,
you need that additional help with Mitchell. Like Mitchell can't be like he can't pull like Kobe Bryant all the time.
You know? Yeah. Any parting thoughts?
I would say I'm very intrigued to, like, I know it's pretty much been like the Darius Garland episode, but I'm very intrigued to see how like these storylines go into the seasons. Like if things get better, I wonder how good this team can actually be. But if things like start, teetering, it's like we didn't even talk about like how long actually Donovan Mitchell may stay. I know he signed to like one of those like short-term extensions to kind of give himself a max, but like I feel like they're really on a timetable with having Mitchell there. So it's going to be real interesting to see like what they prioritize if things don't change for the better.
Yeah. I think Mitchell is still there for at least a couple more years. Like I think if anyone's going to be leaving first, it's still going to be Garland. I'm not going to write that in stone or anything, but that's just my gut feel. And again, I think coaching matters. They have a coaching upgrade, so I think again, even though I do have them as a fifth seed worse than they were last year, I do think there could be a conceivable upgrade if this team does stay healthy. But you can say that about any team. I'm not going to say every team, but all but like a handful of teams at this time of year is somewhat optimistic about their season, just depending on who you ask.
Every team starts at 0.
Yep. So, yeah, I think there could be a world where they get to 50 games, and I'm not going to say they make a conference finals, but it just depends on how it shakes out ultimately. But
They could.
They could, but I'm not banking on it.
Yeah. I mean, another solid second round exit. I mean, like, I don't know, but again, we have to see how it shakes out through the regular season because again, this team could be like I said, this team could be a top 3 team in the East, or they could be a team fighting for a play-in spot and then get smoked in the first round.
You heard that first, Cleveland. Jiarmani hates the city of Cleveland in terms of a free agency spot, and now he's going to say they're.
I mean, you guys lost to the Knicks in the first round 2 years ago, so.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
So, not wrong. No.
Thank you all for watching. Please go like and subscribe. Please go check out vendettasportsmedia.com. In addition to all of our 30 YouTube video NBA preview videos that we're going to be having up here up until the season starts. Jiarmani, anything else?
Nah, man, I'm all good. Like you can hit the nail right on the head. So I mean, like, show sports and video sports media, and yeah, I can't wait for the season to start. Cleveland, I love you.
NBA, MLB, NFL, college football, UFC, everything. Literally, quite literally anything you can think of will be on vendettasportsmedia.com. So please go check that out in addition to everything else on the YouTube channel. My name is Matt. This is Jiarmani. Thank you all for watching. See y'all next time.